Yo, welcome back. It's been a long time since we've explored the live studio space here at HawkeyePodcast.com. I mean, yeah, I haven't been writing much. I haven't been podcasting much. I'm at the point in my life where I'm kind of an inspired writer. I'm not saying I'm an inspiring writer. I'm saying I am an inspired writer, as in I like to sit down and write when I get inspired about something. And anymore, relative to sports, it's happening less and less for me. And that's a me issue. That's a life issue. Got things going on that, are pumping me up maybe a little bit more. And for much of this Iowa basketball season, that was absolutely the case. We're going to talk about that as we explore a lot of things tonight together on this live broadcast, or for the majority of you that are listening to this in podcast form, as you are listening to this after it was recorded 7 p.m. Central Time, March the 13th, 2002, one of the most glorious days of all time, as your Iowa Hawkeyes and my Iowa Hawkeyes just gave us a memory that will be seared in our hearts as long as each of us shall live. And I don't say that flippantly. I'm someone that grew up watching Iowa basketball. 1980 are my first cognizant memories of Iowa basketball. I was 9 years old. And of course, the decade of the 1980s was as good as it's been for Iowa basketball. Well, I mean, the 50s, they won a natty. They beat the San Francisco Dons, for the championship. Then they, got upset in a year where they probably should have won a national championship by Jacksonville State. Oh, by the way, both Jacksonville State and San Francisco are in this tournament. And, well, I guess there's a potential Final Eight matchup between 15-seeded Jacksonville State and Iowa, but we'll probably not see that. It was the best of times in the 1980s as it relates to Iowa basketball. Those games are seared and burned into my heart, into my memory. And there have been instances since then where Iowa's basketball teams have done things heart-searing worthy, few and far between, unfortunately. More disappointing endings than net cuttings, probably the best way to put it. And that's not to say that it's all been disappointing. And oh, by the way, for those of you who are here, you can interact in the chat over here. Not sure how much of that I'm going to get to. Please let me know when you see what the Iowa women are seated at. And I'll break over to ESPN just to pull up those brackets at that point later just to talk about that. Because, oh, by the way, the Iowa basketball programs, men and women, it's the epicenter of the Big Ten. Both of them cutting down nets. This team steering the heart. Let me finish this. I'm going all over the place. For the first 21 or so games of this year, really probably 25, through January, and really, I wasn't connecting to this team. I wasn't emotionally connecting to this team the way that I normally emotionally connect to most Iowa basketball teams. And that's really not this team's fault. The fault lies in my own emotions and expectations, unmet expectations of what we all saw and witnessed a year ago with the 2020-2021 Iowa basketball team. That was a team that was top 10 for nearly the entire season. When Luka Garza announced he was coming back, that was a team that had Final Four aspirations, not just from within the Iowa fan base, but national talking heads. The buildup to that season, especially given all the things that we had taken away from us in our lives with COVID-19, the 2020 NCAA tournament for one, the buildup for that season was pretty big. It meant a lot more than most seasons do because of all the things that were going on around each and every one of us in our lives. Dave Laughlin just saying that the Iowa women are a number 2 seed. Please let me come back to that topic. Yes. Let's see here. I want to make sure. Nothing against you, Dave. I just want to make sure. Yes, Iowa is the number 2 seed. Thank you. And plays on Friday in Iowa City against Illinois State. The Iowa women are a number 3 seed, or Iowa State women are a number 3 seed. Wow. Iowa women as a 2 seed. Holy smokes. We'll look at that bracket a little bit later. Back to my inability to connect with this team this year. It's mostly all about last year and how disappointing the end to that season was, losing to Oregon the way in which they did. And it felt like so many other Iowa basketball seasons of the last quarter century, last 30 years, how it ended. Iowa being out athletic at the guard position last year. Jordan Bohannon having one of his worst games of his career against Oregon. Iowa, nobody really did great. It was just a beatdown. And I thought that last year's Iowa team was going to be different. But in hindsight, shame on me. Because the fingerprints and ingredients of last year's team, even though it had the most dominant scoring center in the history of Big Ten basketball, the NCAA tournament March situations, as somebody once coined, it's about guards. It's about guard skills. It's about taking the ball from the perimeter to the rack and being able to score. It's about the space that is created for your offense when you have multiple players that can do that. It makes things easier for everyone around you. Iowa didn't have that last year. And I sure as heck didn't think they were going to have it this year. I felt before the season began, this was a bubble team. I felt their schedule that they had put together for the out-of-conference season was going to potentially make it hard for them to make it to the NCAA tournament as an at-large team because of the weak schedule. I felt that a 500 record was likely or the ceiling for Iowa this year in Big Ten play. Wrong at the end of things. But through the first 21 games, through that loss at Penn State in overtime and Iowa having just lost 3 of 4 games at that juncture, Iowa was pretty much exactly who I thought they were going to be. And I just couldn't get into that. Couldn't get into that. Again, it's not their fault. It's a me problem. Maybe it's fair weather. I don't know. But then things changed. Fran McCaffrey changed up his starting lineup. He moved Joe Toussaint to an off-the-bench role, and he started Tony Perkins. Obviously, there was the conversation about moving Jordan Bohannon from the 2 back to the 1. And I would tell you this. Jordan's played more 1 since then, but down the stretch here, Tony Perkins has been your 1, by and large. Tony Perkins has been the engine that is making this Iowa offense cook. Since the Tony Perkins game at Nebraska, which was on February the 25th, Tony Perkins is the catalyst for this. That's not to say that Tony Perkins is doing this alone. Oh, by the way, Iowa has the National Player of the Year, even though he probably won't get it. He is the best player in college basketball, and Keegan Murray. I'm not belittling that. Keegan was doing Keegan things before Perkins moved over. But since Perkins moved over into the starting lineup, Keegan's taken his game to a level not seen in this league, in the Big Ten, since the big dog Glenn Robinson. That is not Hawkeye fan John here. Listen, y'all know I'm a big fan. I shed tears today watching all the families hug, Fran hug his son, watching Jordan Bohannon just get that championship. I was so happy for them. Not for myself, not for my 50, tomorrow I'll be 51, not for my 51-year-old self. A little bit. I was joyful and happy. I was really, really happy for them. Jordan Bohannon has taken more crap from Iowa fans. It makes no sense to me that you can be that self-loathing of a person. This program is better off if Jordan had left. If Jordan had left, this program wouldn't be a 5 seed with a really good draw to make it to their first Sweet 16 since 1998, 1999-ish, in there somewhere, Dr. Thomas last season. They wouldn't. So, man, if some of you were that person listening to this, check yourself a little bit. Go enjoy life a little more. Don't eat your own. But Tony Perkins, I'm going to see if I can share some things here. See if this works out for me. For those of you that are here, those of you that are listening to the podcast, I will articulate these things, and you can follow along with what I'm about to say by going to HawkeyePodcast.com, finding the thing that a story I wrote on Saturday morning. It's 2,500 words. I told you earlier I'm an inspired writer, not inspiring, inspired. I was inspired to sit down today and write 2,500 words, and they just flowed out. I probably put 2 hours into the statistical research and all that sort of stuff. But I think it was worth it. I really enjoyed seeing where the thing went. I also never really know where I'm going with the story until I'm done. My wife says it's my superpower. Let me see here. Share screen. Here we go. I'm going to share a window. Share that window. All right. Those of you that are seeing, that are here live, can you see that? Let me know in the chat if you can see that, and let me see if I can't blow it up a little bit bigger. Okay. So either those of you that are watching this live or listening, you can also go to that story at HawkeyePodcast.com. I think it's something about how Iowa became a March team or something like that. Just click on it and scroll down, and you can see Tony Perkins. So what I've got here is I've got every single one of Iowa's Big Ten games. This is the Tony Perkins tab that I have up, and you can see these numbers also in the story. Now I have a line of demarcation. That line right there, everything here is before the Penn State game. These are only Big Ten games. I just felt it was best to use Big Ten play only because, the competition's better. And then below the line is since the Penn State game. So right here, or when I say right here, in the story or in the screen, you can see a little box that I broke out that shows Perkins' stats before he was inserted into the starting lineup and after. So Perkins had, before February 1st, was averaging 15 minutes a game. Since then, and this is through the Indiana game, this does not count the Sunday championship game. Since then, he's averaging 20 minutes a game, 20.5 minutes a game, which is an increase of 35% in minutes. Okay, a 35% increase in minutes. But his production, this doesn't seem like it is points per game. Yeah, he's averaging 8.46 points per game since the move to the starting lineup. Before, he was at 5.9. But since the Tony Perkins game, since the game that we call the Tony Perkins game, the 20-point outburst he had at Nebraska, he's averaging 12.2. His rebounds went from 1.6 a game to 3.38 a game. His assist to turnover ratio basically went from a 1-to-1 to a nearly 3-to-1. He's hitting 50% of his threes since then. Okay. We all have seen his statistics increase. But what doesn't necessarily show up in a stat sheet is the way that he has been playing. He has been playing at 6 feet 4 inches tall, 190 pounds. He's been playing like a guard that you normally see play for Villanova that tears Iowa a new one. He has been playing like that. He can take the ball from the top of the key to the lane and to the rim and finish. He is a absolute must for the opposing team's scouting report. He is drawing potentially the best perimeter defender on the other team, which means that person's not guarding Jordan Bohannon anymore. You catch that? Tony Perkins is proving with his athletic ability, his ability to get to the rim, which causes all type of disruptions for defenses. You got to stop ball. If you don't stop ball, drive, dish, kick, wide open three, drive, score at the rim. All those things are bad for defenses if you don't stop ball. And Iowa, for much of the last 30 years, has been all too easy to stop ball. Therein lies the reason why Iowa has been disappointing in the NCAA tournament for the better part of the last 30 years. I think until Tony Perkins, boy, could be setting ourselves up for a lot of heartbreak here. But I don't think we're going to see an exit like the Oregon exit. Could see an exit, but not to get blown out of the gym because the other team is more athletic than you and you don't have ability to fight back. We all watched the Purdue game on Saturday. We all watched on Sunday. We all watched the Indiana game on Saturday. We all watched the Rutgers game on Friday. This team fights back. This team doesn't roll over because this team has the ingredients that you need to be a March team, a team with hope and a shot in March to get to that second weekend or maybe beyond, as we'll get to. Tony Perkins is it. Not the only reason. That's the most important catalyst for this team in doing what they're doing. Now, we just talked about what Tony does for everyone else. Let's go look at what that's meant. Let's go look at Jordan Bohannon. And again, you can all see these statistics in the story at HawkeyePodcast.com, or for those of you streaming right now, you can see it right here. Jordan Bohannon in Big Ten play before the calendar turned to February 1st, 27.8 minutes, 7.6 points per game, hitting just 25% from three. Something I just said should be ringing in your ear. What I just said a minute ago, when Tony Perkins is drawing the other team's best defender because he's now worthy of it and shown that he will beat you if you don't, and all the problems that his dribble drive game causes, now Jordan Bohannon isn't being guarded by the other team's best defender as much. Bohannon's minutes are virtually identical. Bohannon's minutes have only gone up 1.8% since February 1st. But Bohannon in Big Ten play. But Bohannon's scoring through the Indiana game, 7.6 points per game to 13.23. Smoke him if you got him. His assist to turnover ratio, better. His 3-point shooting before Tony Perkins started, again, 25.5%, 14 of 55 through the first 9 Big Ten games. Since Tony Perkins went to the starting lineup, Bohannon, 43 of 95. That was through the Indiana game. And in the championship game today against Purdue, Bohannon was where is you? Bohannon was 1 of 7. Don't want to spoil my statistics, so let's just forget that one. But anyway, he's shooting over 40%. You can't tell me that the Fran's move to start Tony Perkins didn't make life totally different for Jordan Bohannon. It has. And it's even made it better since the Tony Perkins game against Nebraska. Tony had 20 that game. Then he came back and had 6 against Michigan, then 13 against Illinois, 13 against Michigan, 17 against Illinois, 6 against Northwestern, 16 against Rutgers, 8 against Indiana. And then today, he had 11 points today against Purdue. Everybody else is getting better looks because of Tony Perkins. Let's take a look at Keegan. All right. Keegan's first 9 Big Ten regular season games, or first 8 because he missed one or whatever. Keegan's statistics prior to February 1st. He was averaging 32.89 minutes a game, and since then, 33.38. Again, virtually the same minutes for Keegan, okay? But since Tony Perkins was inserted into the starting lineup, Keegan's points per game have gone from 20.11 to 25.85. That is enormous. It is enormous. That's a huge jump. He's averaging 4 times as many assists per game. He was at 0.56 per game. Now he's at 1.92. That's probably a better way to say it. 400% more assist production per game. His rebounds have gone from 7.78 to 9. His 3-point shooting percentage, again, this is what I'm talking about with spacing, with what Perkins can do at 6'4", 190, and a phenomenal athlete, maybe the best on the team. Keegan Murray's 3-point shooting percentage before February 1st was 37%. Since then, it's 50%. Folks, if this was a court of law, I would say right now, I rest my case. I think I can. I think you all get what I'm saying. To me, the move to start Perkins, one of the best coaching decisions I've ever seen an Iowa coach make, and we only know these things in hindsight. But Tony Perkins is the catalyst for this basketball team. And again, I say that with a straight face. I'm not saying he's a better player than Keegan Murray, because he's not. I am saying, and I wrote this morning, that he is going to be first team All Big Ten. Tony Perkins is. Everyone around Perkins is better because he's a starter now. Everyone. I think I've made that clear. Not if you can hear me. What a move. What a change. And it turned the entire season around. And shortly after that move, when they went to play, they won a home game against Minnesota. Smoked them. When they went to Maryland and won 110-87 in the next game, my eyebrows raised. My heart began to flutter a little bit. It pulled me back in. I'm like, John, he looked really good. That's the most points Maryland's given up on one of the worst beatings I've ever had at home ever. Maybe you need to pay attention. Then they come home and they beat Nebraska 98-75. Then they lose the tight one to Michigan. But then they go to Ohio State and win on the road. And that, my friends, is when I was in hook, line, and sinker. Had COVID. I was in a hotel and watched that game and was stunned that Iowa won 75-62. Why was I stunned? This team, I thought, would struggle to shoot the three before the season began. I thought they'd struggle to rebound, and I thought they'd struggle to shoot the three. Again, I was not wrong. They did until they turned it around. The Ohio State game surprised me and pulled me in all the way because Iowa shot less than 30% from three in that game. Shot less than 30% from three in that game. Remember that. Don't let me forget to come back to that here in 2 minutes. Yet they still won by double digits on the road against then a top 25 team and a team that's a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament. A team with a All-American caliber player on it. They kick their butts because they're dogs. They have that dog in them. And I felt that way when they lost at Purdue without Keegan Murray. I was excited. Like, this team's got dog in it that I haven't seen other Iowa teams have in a while. Then the next game for them was at home against Illinois, and they gave Illinois all they wanted. I'm like, man, that was encouraging. And then the wheels fell off for a bit. But for them to win that game at Ohio State, a game they had to have, shooting less than 30% from three, that made me a believer that what my eyes were seeing with what I know about teams that position themselves to be competent in March situations and have legitimate shots to make a run in the tournament, I was starting to see that from Iowa manifest right before my eyes. Then after that, they crushed Michigan State at home. By then, I was already on the bus again. They went to Nebraska. It was a little bit salty, but Tony Perkins went off, and Tony's had the hammer down since. Home against Northwestern, they won that game by 21. Then they went to Ann Arbor and won that by 11. You know, it's like the Vince McMahon WWE gifts. You know, his face is excited for a minute, then he goes another level, and he falls back in his chair. That was basically me. And then, of course, losing like they did at Illinois, an incredible game, and doing what they did in this tournament. And I'm going to bookend what I said earlier about Iowa being able to win a game where the three-point shots aren't falling. This morning, in the article that I wrote before Iowa played against Purdue, I had shared some statistics that since February 1st, Iowa is the second best team in the nation. From that point forward to now, behind only Gonzaga in the advanced metrics rankings. Iowa was sixth best in the nation from February 1st to now in three-point percentage at 42.5%. Wow. Yeah, we've all been seeing it. So I wrote this morning, it will be interesting to see if Iowa can gut out wins in the tournament if the threes aren't falling like they weren't falling against Ohio State, yet they gutted that out on the road. Well, we didn't have to wait very long because Iowa today was 8 of 28, and 8 of 28 is 28.5% from three. Okay? Your Iowa Hawkeyes just cut down the nets against Purdue, the team that I felt was their worst matchup of any team in the Big Ten. Purdue beat them twice this year. Iowa won that game by 9 points, shooting 28.5% from three, and getting out-rebounded by 18 rebounds. 18 rebounds. Iowa was out-rebounded by. They were out-rebounded on the offensive glass by 7. You lose those games. Or teams from Iowa's past have lost those games. This Iowa team, they didn't. Iowa turned it over only 6 times to Purdue's 17. Purdue couldn't play as fast as Iowa. It was frenetic at times. Purdue couldn't play at Iowa's pace. Purdue is your number one offensive efficiency team in the country coming into this. Iowa's number 2. Purdue couldn't play Iowa's pace. Iowa dictated tempo. Iowa was out-rebounded by 18 and shot 28.5% from 3, and they just cut down the nets and beat Purdue by 9. Folks, I'm dropping evidence all over the place. I'm trying to maybe even talk myself more into what I already believe, that this Iowa roster is the most March-capable roster Iowa has had since BJ, Roy, and Ed in March of 1989. Many of you watching this are like, BJ, Roy. Oh, you're talking about those old guys that all you old people talk about. That's who I'm talking about. The holy trinity of the 1980s. B.J. Armstrong, Roy Marble, and Ed Horton. This is the most March-capable roster since that one. This is a roster that can defend the perimeter of other teams. This is not a roster like your 4-guard Villanova rosters that have done so well in this era of college basketball that is a guards game in the tournament. I'm going to give a little caveat here. It is a ball handling, attacking the rim game, penetrating from the top of the key game. And it doesn't have to just be guards. Where Iowa is so unique is that 6'8" Keegan Murray or 6'9" can take the ball from the top of the key on anybody. That's a mismatch problem. You can't put a 5 out there. And most 4s can't guard him. So you might have to go with a 3. And then you have a height issue where you can post them up. Iowa causes mismatch problems all over the place. This Iowa team does now with how they're playing, with how they've been playing for 6 weeks. This isn't a fluke. Again, none of this is to say that Iowa's going to run roughshod through the tournament. I'm just telling you, this team has the March fingerprints you want that they've been sorely lacking. This team has it in spades over last year's team, even though it had National Player of the Year, Luka Garza, one of the most dominant centers in college basketball in a quarter century. This team is built better for the tournament than last year's team. So Keegan can do that. Patrick, to a lesser extent, but still can do that. Even though the funk in his game, he picks up his dribble, gets in the air, doesn't know what he's doing, drives me crazy. But you know what? Against Indiana, you needed all of it. There's been so many times the last 2 weeks where I've started to tweet something that says, man, they got to take Patrick out. He's out of control. He doesn't know what he's doing. He gets in the air. And the dude funks it in. His funky style just, I'm not going to tweet it. So Keegan can do it. Patrick can do it. Chris has done it. Perkins can do it. Joe Toussaint can do it. Aaron Eulis to a lesser extent can, but what Eulis has been lacking this year is he can get past the first defender. But when he gets into that lane, he is not a consistent threat to try to score. He looks to kick. He gets a little – he's not comfortable down there amongst the trees yet. But I think that his progression this offseason can do it, can get there. So that's 5 guys. It's 5. And this isn't an offense that's inside out like last year's was. This is an offense that the spacings, because of Tony Perkins, it's made it better for everyone. You'd think that Luka Garza made life better for everyone. That's it's true. But last year, Connor played more minutes, and Connor's not the best offensive threat. And teams just double teamed Luka with whomever was guarding Connor, and Connor couldn't make him pay. But Connor has been playing real well. Since Tony Perkins started, Connor's minutes have gone from 15.3 per game to 18.8 per game. His points per game have nearly doubled. His assist to turnover ratio is like 4-to-1, 5-to-1, where it was not as good before then. His 3-point shooting before today's game, Connor was 14 of 28 from 3 since February 1st, before today's game, and I think he was 0 for today. Connor today was Connor McCaffrey. Where are you at? Yeah, he was 0 for today. Oh, here it is. It's right in front of me. Connor McCaffrey was 1 for 4. Anyway, but you know what? This, as is the case with Connor's game, it's so much about what he does that won't show up in the stat sheet. The guy's brilliant. He's one of the highest IQ basketball players on the court I've ever seen. He does things every game that I just sit back and go, that's freaking smart. Just from passing the ball to the ref before the ref starts the 5-second clock, that's a savvy move. How Connor plays defense, I'm not like touching myself in any erotic way. How Connor plays defense with his upper body and how he leans in and he puts a ton of pressure on players often that are much bigger than him. Several times this year, Connor's been asked to guard the post. And how he gets away with fouling with his upper body and by not reaching over. Connor is just really freaking smart. He's a phenomenal passer. He is a post player's dream. I mean, not just Connor always looks in first, and he doesn't give up right away. He waits. He allows his person trying to post up, whether it's Keegan or whomever or Luka last year, he lets him work a little bit. And then he gets it in. And if the post kicks it back out, Connor just doesn't exit and kick the ball around. He waits and sometimes refeeds. Iowa wouldn't be here with where it is today without Connor. They wouldn't. Fran McCaffrey saying today, Josh Agundale played 10 minutes today against Purdue. He scored 4 points. He played good defense. And they were minutes Iowa really need because Chris Murray was in foul trouble. And Purdue's just so big. Fran today said Iowa wouldn't have won the game without Josh Agundale. Fran is a player's coach extraordinaire. These guys would all run through a wall for him. Have you noticed how few players transfer out of this program now relative to previous coaches and relative to the sport? Yes, Jack Nunge transferred out last year, but we all know that Jack's father had passed. He wanted to get closer to home. Xavier was about 3 hours from his home, and it's a big 3 hours versus 9 or so or 8. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And I see somebody asked me earlier over in the chat, John, what do you think Iowa would be with Jack Nunge? I think they'd probably be better. I mean, Jack was not a traditional big man. Jack could get out, step out, hit the three. I would have loved to have had Jack Nunge. Philip Rebracha done a lot of dirty work. He's made contributions. Peyton Sandfort, Sandfort scored 10 points today. He's 2 for 2 from 2-point range, 2 for 2 from 3-point range. Unafraid, playing like a guy that's been there. Man, the type of confidence, the type of benefit that all the guys coming back next year are going to get from this is, you can't put a price tag on it. It's significant. Peyton Sandfort, I think, his game is going to take it to another level. I think Ulis is going to go to another. I think Tony Perkins is going to become a superstar, and Chris Murray is going to go to another level. At any rate, Joe Toussaint. I mentioned earlier, I didn't say he got benched. I said he was transitioned to a bench role. He didn't pout. Joe Toussaint has to be the team MVP for attitude. He did not pout. He goes in there and just gives it his all. Folks, think about this. 12 players for Iowa. Riley Mulvey today played 3.5 minutes. 12 players for Iowa played at least 3 minutes in this game today. Aaron Ulis played 3 minutes. Ulis played a lot of minutes there in the middle of the season. Peyton Sandfort played 15. Connor McCaffrey, 16. Joe Toussaint, 10. Chris Murray, 14. Philip Rebracha, 12. He was in and out in foul trouble all day. Josh Agundale played 10. 12 players played. Every single scholarship player on the roster made a key contribution to winning a Big Ten championship. Do you have any idea how far that goes with team chemistry? I tweeted during the game and after. This is the most connected Iowa basketball team I've seen since I can remember. Oh, by the way, I did tweet out yesterday, Michael Graham on Twitter. We were talking about, comparisons for Tony Perkins, and someone tweeted this at me, and I was thinking it too, but I wish I would have pulled their name up. The best I've got is Andre Woolridge. He's not at Andre's level right now, but I think he can get there. Andre was really strong, but Andre was 6'1". Perkins is 6'4". Perkins is, again, like I said, one of the most athletic players on the team. His mid-range in the paint game, a lot like Andre Woolridge's. If Perkins can get up 1,000 three-point shots a day this offseason, the sky's the limit for this guy. First team All Big Ten. Wow. All right. So we've talked about the championship. Clearly, winning your conference tournament doesn't really matter to your seeding. Jay Billis said something I caught in the ESPN bracket show that I had on just for a little bit. I really haven't watched much of anything since the brackets came out. But Jay Billis said that he thinks the NCAA seeding for at-large teams should be over and done at the conclusion of the regular seasons. I don't necessarily disagree with him. Now, that's not to say that Iowa's winning the Big Ten tournament is any less impressive, because it's really impressive. It's an unbelievable payoff for each and every one of these guys. Fran, as a coach of his kids, to cut down nets like that with his two sons, are you freaking kidding me? But for all of them, for Jordan Bohannon, for just closure for Jordan, how last year ended, it just didn't end right for him, didn't feel right. He came back. He wasn't planning on coming back until C.J. Frederick transferred, and Fran talked to him. And as Chad Leistikov, the Register, has tweeted and written about, Jordan had some work to do getting back into good graces with his classes. But he came back to finish it right. They're doing it. It's just an unbelievable story. But as it relates to NCAA tournament seeding, clearly didn't. Iowa probably went from a 6 seed to a 5 seed with what they did in the tournament. And let's talk about that 5 seed. Oh, man, folks, there's so much going on. So much going on. So Iowa is in the Midwest bracket. They play the Richmond Spiders in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. And looking at Richmond from a Ken Pomeroy comparison, they are the 68th best offense, most efficient offense, but they're the 104th most efficient defense. They're very good at not turning the ball over. But really on offense, that's really about their calling card, is they're really good at not turning the ball over. Defensively, I think they're a solid perimeter defensive team, but again, Iowa's got answers for that. They're not a very big team. They don't go deep on the bench. Their bench minutes is 272%, just 26.5% bench utilization. Their 2-foul participation is just as low as Iowa's, but their bench minutes, 272nd in the country, 26.5% of their minutes comes from the bench. For Iowa, 38.6% of their minutes comes from the bench. That's 35th best in the country. So, and Iowa does a number of things offensively exceptionally well. Top 33 in effective field goal percentage, 3rd in turnover percentage, 55th in offensive rebounding percentage, which is miraculous. They're the 35th best three-point shooting team in the country based on the whole season, but they're one of the 10 best over the course of the last 14 games. I just don't see the Spiders from Richmond, upsetting Iowa. And then in round 2, if the 5th seed Providence Friars can get past their opening round matchup, and Providence plays South Dakota State, who's won a ton of games and they have a really, really good offense, one of the best offenses in the country. They just don't play anybody. But as the NCAA tournament shows us, it doesn't necessarily matter. So if it's Iowa Providence, then let me go down here. Ken Pomeroy does not really like Providence is 49th in Pomeroy's metrics. Iowa's 13th. Providence is 31st in offensive efficiency and 79th in defensive efficiency. Iowa is, I think, second in offensive efficiency and 77th in defensive efficiency. So Iowa is a much better offensive team. Providence doesn't. I mean, they lost to Villanova. Did they beat Villanova this year? No, they lost to Villanova twice. They got blown out of the water by Creighton in the Big East tournament. Pomeroy is only saying they're going to beat South Dakota State 77-75. So, folks, I love my brackets. I take these things really seriously, as serious as you can take brackets, right? I mean, it's not like war in Ukraine or anything. But I don't just write Iowa on my sheet as far as I can go. I did when I was like 12. But I don't do that. I like to win the pools that I enter. And I don't enter them for even money. I just like to win. I like to compete with myself. Man. Folks, I got Iowa going to the Sweet 16. Got Iowa playing against Kansas in Chicago on the second weekend. And if Iowa plays Kansas in Chicago, it will at best be a neutral crowd. There are so many Iowa fans that live in Chicago. Good luck, Kansas fans. Good luck for me trying to fly out of Kansas City to Chicago to watch that game because it's going to be – the flights are all going to be booked. So it's probably other place for me. I have Iowa beating Kansas. Watch a lot of Kansas. One of their starters keeps hitting on my daughter at one of the bars at Lawrence, and I'm fixing to go up there with her and tell him, hey, she's already told you 3 times she's got a boyfriend and she's not interested in you and she can give 2 craps about your basketball team or that you play basketball. The dude's just incredulous that she's not giving him the time of the day. No, I'm not going to say who it is yet. I think Iowa's going to beat KU. I've got Iowa in my final freaking 4. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm just looking at the brackets and I'm looking at the team that I see that Iowa has. And I'm looking at how they are composed and I'm looking at their March fingerprints. I think this team can do it. And if they don't make it to the Final 4, I'm not going to be disappointed. I really, really want to see this team get to the Sweet 16, though. And I think that they will. Yeah, John, you're just a homer. Well, Reese Davis, ESPN analyst, Iowa Final 4. Clark Kellogg, CBS analyst, Iowa Final 4. Seth Greenberg, ESPN analyst, former coach, Iowa Final 4. Dick Vitale, no introduction necessary, Iowa Final 4. Iowa playing Kentucky for the national championship game. And that's just since I started doing this podcast at 7. Who knows who else jumped on the bandwagon since then. I don't even have to squint to see it because we've all been watching this with our eyes wide open the last 6 weeks. I've done my best to impress my opinion on you relative to why I think Iowa has made its turnaround, relative to why Iowa was able to do what it did in this tournament, 4 wins in 4 days, to play Illinois' shoes off in Champaign. It's because they're built differently. This team is the most like Fran's Siena teams at Iowa. And I remember several marches being here after Iowa exited early in the tournament. Just like, guys, I mean, Fran McCaffrey had better guard play at Siena than he does at Iowa. He recruited dogs to Siena. He does not recruit dogs to Iowa. It's not for lack of trying, but Fran somehow collected a bunch of mutts. When I say mutts, I mean Mac schools wanted Tony Perkins and Aaron Eulis. Iowa wasn't beating out Villanova for Joe Toussaint. Iowa didn't have to beat out anybody for Keegan Murray or Chris Murray. Hell, one time I said I didn't think Jordan Bohannon was a Big Ten basketball player. Thank you for forgiving me, Jordan. But this team, these guards, Tom Izzo saying a couple of weeks ago, I don't know how Franny keeps all these guards happy. They have developed from mutts into absolute dogs. And I mean that not dog being bad, but dog being good. To make a twist on a Run DMC lyric from many years ago. This team is March ready. This team is built for the tournament. Now, I'm not saying they're built like Villanova is or like Gonzaga has been or like Baylor is. But heck, I guess I got them on my Final Four. And holy cow. Somebody else, Cat Dad over here in the chat, says Final Four. I mean, what am I doing here? Making the chalk pick all of a sudden? It's unbelievable. And as Elijah Reinhardt says, there's a ton of fight left in these dogs. We're 51 minutes into this. I don't really want it to end yet. If any of you has any questions, and you want to ask them, go ahead and send them over in the chat right now. I'll talk for a couple of minutes here to give some opportunity and time for them to fill up. But, next year, the first half of the season, I told you how I wasn't connected. I was texting with some family members. I'm like, my gosh, just wait till next year. Oh my gosh, another year of bubble meh. Because this roster next year, Keegan's gone. But all of a sudden, with the way things have changed since Tony Perkins, and Iowa's getting in their best point guard recruit of the Fran McCaffrey era this coming season. Obviously, Josh Dix has a road to recover from his compound fracture in his lower leg. But if he can get back, I mean, yeah, you got to replace likely Keegan Murray. I mean, if Keegan Murray shocked the world and said he wants to come back and play another year with his brother, I mean, forget about it. I mean, holy cow, that'd be one of the happiest days of my Iowa basketball life. I don't expect that. His stock is only going up. But even without Keegan, I think Chris has another level that he's going to go to. Chris is playing a lot like Keegan was last year, only better. But there were times last year where Keegan was inconsistent with his tenacity. Whereas this year, if he sees a lane, he gone. He's a Greek freak. I've said several times, there's times he reminds me of Julius Erving. But he wasn't always like that last year. There were glimpses of it, just like there were glimpses of Keegan or Chris doing the same thing this year. What do you have, 29 or 30 in a win? I can't remember what game that was. Played really well against Purdue and Iowa City. There have been glimpses, taking it to the rack in a tournament game. Was it against Rutgers or was it? I'm forgetting where all these things were. Taking it to the rack and falling on his back, but it was an unbelievable dunk. Chris has shown that he can ratchet things up in that tenacity level too. I think that Riley Mulvey played 3 minutes in the Big Ten championship game today. The guy should be in high school. Remember, he reclassified and came to Iowa early. He's really weak strength-wise. So this summer is going to be big for him. Agundale, maybe lose 20 pounds. I don't know. I mean, he ran out of gas pretty quick, but you know what? There's some possibilities there. Rebracha should be back. Okay, let's go here to the questions. Brett Eulery says, John, how does Iowa match up against the top three in their quadrant in the bracket? Kansas is a team that, Kansas's statistical analytics are really good. I mean, they're sixth in Ken Palm's rankings, but Iowa's 13th, folks. Kansas, the sixth best offensive efficiency team. Again, Iowa's second. Kansas, the 29th defensive efficiency team. And there's nothing that shows up in their fingerprints though that is elite. They lost at Baylor, they lost at TCU, they lost at Texas, they lost at home to Kentucky on January 29th by 18, by the way. They lost at Texas Tech. You see that they didn't lose. They lost one game at home. It's going to take a very in-your-face defensive effort from Iowa, but this Kansas team is not as good as Kansas teams from the past that have been 1 seeds. They're just not. And then Auburn. Auburn is a team whose offense isn't what I thought it was when I looked at it earlier. They're 24th best in offense, but 8th best in defense, which is kind of a surprise for Auburn. They are a very, very good defensive team. Number 1 in the country in block percentage. Number 4 in the country in two-point field goal percentage defense. So they are a really good defensive team. They're long, they're lean. And then the number 3 seed in Iowa's bracket is Wisconsin. I'd love for Iowa to get a chance to play Wisconsin. So thank you for that. Let's go here to Dean Freen. This is a long time coming. The Fran Connor Jordan haters stand up and be counted. Indeed. Why is my wife and daughter keep texting me, and I thought I turned notifications off. Richard Stockton says, what team in our region would you not want the Hawks to play? Well, I'd love it if Kansas would lose. It'd be great. I'd love it if Kansas and Auburn would lose. But really, to get to the Sweet 16, actually, South Dakota State almost worries me more than Providence, frankly. Let's go to Corey Johnson says, I don't think it's a coincidence that with Perkins' emergence, the defense has been immensely better. No, it is not a coincidence. It's not. Defense is infectious. Perkins is a really good defender. Perkins is a star in the making. Star in the making. This is from Andrew Barber. There are also rumors about Aiden Shaw picking Iowa with the coaching change at Missouri. Well, that would be fantastic. No doubt. QC Hawk 571, recent history of Power 5 conference tourney winners in the NCAA. I don't know. There's a part of me that wondered, do they underperform? I wish the Big Ten tournament got over on Saturdays and not Sunday. This is one less day of rest for Iowa. Now, Iowa's opponent, Richmond, they also played today as well. So there's that. But Iowa plays on Thursday. Wish Iowa would. To me, they should have the teams that play on Sundays get to play on Friday. So it's at least another day's rest, but they don't. Elijah Reinhardt, is there any team whose game translates better to the freedom of movement allowed by referees who don't think that this is a wrestling duel than Iowa? If the NCAA officials, as they typically do, don't call it, they call it a little bit tighter than you see in the Big Ten. The Big Ten just allows people to beat each other up. So this Iowa team can definitely benefit from freedom of movement for sure. Richard Stockton says, Sanford is obviously a great shooter, but there are passing flashes there too. He has fit some balls into tight windows. Yeah, he's coming on. Really like it. Torque Mason says, even if South Dakota State wins, Iowa will have more time to scout for them. Wouldn't want them in the first round. I agree. I would not want South Dakota State in the first round. No way. So you would think that one of the Iowa assistant coaches is going to scout South Dakota State while the other one's going to scout Richmond, which I think you would want to do that. Paul Heimer says 2:10 tip. Paul, is that for the Iowa game? Have they announced the times? Let me go back to Twitter here. Yep, 2:10 Central Time tip-off against Richmond on Thursday. Here we go. Iowa is one of the first games of the tournament. Obviously, there'll be the 11 a.m. tip-off games, and then the Hawkeyes will be there for the 2:10 game. Well, we'll get a chance to know. And the game is on True TV, Paul says. Thank you, Paul. Really appreciate that. All right, folks. I'm feeling like I'm rambling. go through Twitter here real quick. Those of you listening to this podcast won't hear the long pauses that the folks watching this live did here, but I appreciate each and every one of you coming onto this here for the live show. Very much so. And as always, appreciate you reading what I write, listening to what I talk about. All right, that'll do it. Hey, good seeing you again. It's been a while. We've got March. Hopefully we can do this a few more times this month. I'd really love to spend more time around this team than just one more weekend, at least 2. What about 3? And we'll talk about brand advancement and things like that. We'll see how things play out. But hey, as always, I appreciate it. Iowa women again, 2-seeded, which is fantastic. I haven't been able to go in and dive into any of their brackets. Somebody said Iowa State is a 3-seed and Iowa's 2-seed bracket. Wouldn't that be a fun Elite 8 matchup between Iowa and Iowa State? Can you imagine that? Holy smokes. That would be fantastic. All right, folks.